Hey, Ian Stewart here from Ian Stewart Cycles. You know, these great videos that you're just enjoying now, all five of you. Either way, I appreciate you checking it out. I have a podcast called The Mechanics of Transportation in which I interview people about transportation issues. You know, how to get around on bike. What's a cargo bike? What's a bike group like? What's going on in the world of transportation federally, statewide. So I'm going to show some of my podcasts here on Ian Stewart Cycles. We're going to start with Andy Boenau. He works with the city of Richmond, Virginia about transportation issues. And we talk about car brain, whether you suffer from it, whether you're curious about it, whether you want to know if you've ever had it. So enjoy this episode of The Mechanics of Transportation with my guest, Andy Boenau. Andy Boenau, welcome to The Mechanics of Transportation. Do me a favor, tell me what you do and why I wanted you on this podcast.
Thank you for having me, Ian. What do I do? I look for like-minded people who hosts podcasts about transportation or the built environment. That's what I do. And I have come to discover that there aren't that many. So I am delighted that you are leading this podcast.
Well, thank you. I like to nerd out, but I think I'm a nerd about it. But go ahead. I cut you off. Go ahead.
My whole career, over 25 years, has been in transportation in some way or another. And I'm asking myself the same question that I did at the beginning of the career, which is, what do I want to do when I grow up? Or what do I like doing? And it just so happens that I'll find a niche within transportation planning or urban planning, and I enjoy it and I stick with it. And along the way, I have found that my particular strong suit, or I guess is a way to describe it, is this, in transportation terms, the intersection of mobility stuff and storytelling. I like to run my mouth about it. I like to ask questions like, why do we do this? Like an annoying toddler sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I find that that's where I get the most personal growth. Cause I don't come at these questions like I have all the answers to how to make the built environment great immediately. I'm just on this continual quest to help people design places that can lead to happy neighborhoods, healthy lifestyles, that good stuff. So wherever you are, however old or young you are, you can enjoy life, like human flourishing. That's the tagline.
Yeah. I feel like I came to transportation in the same way of just kind of covering transportation, but I also come at it like an old man yelling at clouds in a way, in terms of, why is this like this? Why is this like that? Why, are things working or not working when they should work? And that has led me down so many different roads, for the pun, to figure out why things work, and then being a storyteller, wanting to tell why things work. How come, it takes so long to get, reduced speed sign in your town? Why, what is Vision Zero about? What does it mean for me, the average person, driver, and things like that? We're on a short time leash today, and which means I'll just have to have you back, which I'm happy to do. We're going to talk about this thing called car brain, and car brain is all over, at least social media. I know you use it a lot in your social media, and I'm going to ask you what it means. I'm going to tell you my definition of car brain, or my story of car brain, is that years ago, because now I really try hard to pay attention when I'm driving. I love my car. I have a Mini Cooper. It's a love-hate. I hate paying for it. I hate everything it comes with. I hate that I have to get into it in my suburban home and go 3 miles to go someplace to get to the market. I can ride. I do ride. But it's that's a whole other story. My car brain, though, years ago when I hopped on one of the highways, I need to go the speed limit that everyone else is going, or on a strode, which is but it's a 4 to 8 mile or lane road that encourages speeding. I need to go the speed that everyone's going, which is not 45, it's 55 or 65, even though there's houses right near me. My brain would, I have to do this. And my car brain now says, no, I go the speed limit, and I come to a full stop at a stop sign, and I look for pedestrians. Ooh, I get excited, dropping my kid off today at school. And, I got bummed because I saw someone was trying to cross the street and I couldn't stop in time because they were blocked by another car. And I was like, oh, I wanted to stop. So what is car brain? And And we'll go from there.
So I started. I certainly did not coin that term, but I started
Right.
using it because many of us who are very online saw a study that began in the UK, and there have since been several, I think, respectfully copycat studies, like deliberately trying to replicate these studies. And they called it in the UK, the researchers called it motonormativity. And the idea behind their research was just trying to study people, and which this is how I came across it, because I'm fascinated by our silly human brains and why we do the things that we do, um, especially on the consumer side of things. It fascinates me, and how you can apply those types of behavior to the rest of our life. And so this study was asking people questions, the same type of question in a different context. One, how would you behave in this scenario? And it involved an automobile. And then a similar type of scenario that didn't involve an automobile. So, for example, how would you feel about blowing cigarette smoke in a child's face? Do you feel strongly like it's okay, or strongly against it, or strongly in favor of it, like you would do this? And of course, the vast majority said no, I would never do that. That's antisocial behavior. How would you feel about idling in your car right next to a sidewalk where school children are playing? And these questions weren't asked back to back, but they were asked separately. And what the researchers found was, when you're involved, when you're asked these questions that have to do with your car, or even observing somebody else doing something about driving or parking, that we as humans tend to justify or defend or even perform ourselves some form of antisocial behavior that we wouldn't ordinarily perform. Like, I wouldn't ordinarily. There's a great comedic bit by Gary Goldman about standing in the grocery line and being cut off in Whole Foods. The lady with the shopping cart cutting him off. Like, she abandons the cart and he goes around. That kind of over the top antisocial behavior, when we see it in real life, it's so jarring. We think, I can't believe that person did that. I can't believe someone physically shoved another human being out of the way. Like the old Black Friday sales at Best Buy at 4:30 in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. You'd see some antisocial behavior that the rest of the year you just wouldn't see. But when it
Right.
comes to sitting in your car, for reasons, humans are willing and sometimes quick to do awful things to each other. So I've been using that term car brain instead of motonormativity, because one, it's just
Right.
hard to say, it's hard to type, and I like terms that are sticky, and I feel like car brain is a sticky one. I know some people use it to describe just simply a pro car bias, or we're talking about planning and engineering street networks. You might say, is that car oriented infrastructure? I'm not judging people's use of the term, but I use it in the sense of that antisocial behavior, being willing and even to justify or perform yourself antisocial behavior involving a personal automobile.
Right. I think when we do get in the car, the population, we, generally, and this used to be me, you think you're the only one. I am the only one in a hurry. Get out of my way. Why are people going so fast, so slow? You're in my way. And you forget that people all are going places. I had this happen today coming back from the county seat, where traffic, the speed limit on this road courthouse, which is in some spots 6 lanes, 4 lanes mostly, they were going 40 ish. And my normal brain would be, oh, they're finally going, slower. They're going the speed limit. But part of me was fighting it, like, why are you going so slow? Like, there was no way. And I just took a breath and I'm like, they're going the speed limit and it's drizzly and they're paying attention. And I had to breathe and go, it's okay. This is what they should be doing when it's drizzly and wet out. And I think that's kind of a,
Yeah.
a kicker to car brain, where you just kind of forget you're in your bubble. You're in your 10,000 pound or more bubble.
And I think so many people uh, understand that when you're talking, if it's one on one, or you're you're at dinner talking to your spouse, or you're talking with your teenage kids who just started driving, we all get it. Even it's not like there's some that every person who, for instance, rides a bicycle or only owns one car instead of two cars, that they're just so much more virtuous than everyone else and that they're above these kinds of things. It's just, it's a human nature kind of thing. It's weird, but it happens to all of us. Just that feeling that um, oh, I've got to get where I'm going. And I think most of us who are parents probably have a version of one of our kids being in the car and yelling out, "Green means go," or something like that.
Yeah.
One of my
Yeah.
kids did that to me one time. I'll never forget it. And I know I'm not alone with that. Yeah. What it does is it ends up leading to behavior that, if whether you're in a car, you're in another car, or you're interacting with somebody who's walking or in a wheelchair or riding a bicycle on the street, when there's some kind of conflict, whether it's a physical crash or it's just some kind of angry confrontation because how dare I have to wait behind this person on a bike, um, things get volatile quickly. And if we're talking about even just car versus car crashes, if you have this mentality that I'm more important than everybody else, I have got, it's okay this time because it's me and I've got to get to CVS before they close to do whatever. I'm going to go ahead and run this light, or I'm going to go 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. When you crash, that energy involved in that crash is so much more powerful than if you were driving slower. And so those little bits, call it, whether you want to call it car brain or something else, whatever's in you that's compelling you to behave poorly behind the wheel, has dramatic and measurable and just awful fallout on the road. So this, it's not something like, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if we were all gentler behind the wheel? It's not this kind of Mayberry thing. Like, we should just be happier, like feel better about the people around you. It's this real life death and destruction that we're causing by, let's call it the condition of car brain. And so the faster people realize this about themselves and identify it, the better, because then we can start figuring out personal solutions. Like, I think you may have mentioned this, the cruise control, just the habit of, all right, I'm going to be on this street for a while. I'm going to put cruise control on because it is hard to drive 25, even though it's posted 25,
Mm-hmm.
little things like that. But you don't do that if you can't first acknowledge that you've got bad behavior behind the wheel.
Yeah. When I interviewed Veronica O. Davis, who wrote a great book on transportation, she was an engineer up in DC and did all these great things. And she was saying that people, they forget their social contract when they got the car, when they got their license, the running red lights and things like that, because they forgot, like, oh, I'm supposed to pay attention to the rules, to the speed limit. And I know in future conversations, we could talk why, even when you think that and you get on a road that's super straight and that's 4 lanes, your automatic instinct is to go faster, which is a whole other, which allows car brain to be like, oh, look, I could go kind of fast, even though it's 35 on this road and there's 2 lanes, and there's houses. Well, it's straight. I could go fast. And that's a whole other design issue.
Yeah,
What,
and there's so much involved in that with the way that our land is developed around the assumption that we all will use a personal automobile to drive everywhere all the time for everything, um, and then the engineering of the roads that encourage bad behavior, and then the analysis of, is traffic, in air quotes, working, is it acceptable, just even the terms we use as professional engineers, saying things like delay instead of wait a second. Like,
mm-hmm.
normal people wouldn't say, they wouldn't, I don't think, on their own think to say, well, I was delayed for 45 seconds on my way to see Ian. No, I waited at a red light and then I went about my business. But there's also these external things, not to take away the ultimate responsibility of drivers. They're responsible behind the wheel, but there are outside factors that are constantly encouraging us to behave badly.
Yeah. And I think the flip side of that is, I don't know if it's the flip side, but you right now, I feel like design wise, infrastructure wise, vision zero wise, and I don't know if it's because I'm in the world of transportation, but I feel like the conversation around transportation, at least with advocates like yourself and other people that I interview, it's ramped up, in a way that so many more people are talking about what we need to do to slow the high rate of speed related death and crashes and things like that. And from the federal government now doing some things to finally get cars to lower, and that's a whole other story. But I feel like we're doing all these things to get people to slow down with bump outs, roundabouts, things, building not straight streets and things like that, all because people can't seem to slow down, or the speed limit was designed too high because engineers think, oh, you can go 35 when it should be 25, or 45 it should be 35. I feel like it's changing. What can we do? And I'll let you go so we can talk again. But what can we do to combat car brain? How can we, when we get in the car, do you know any tips that we could do to kind of, for me, my phone is now down. It's in the door. I don't, unless I'm using GPS, which I set up before, like I'm really conscious about it. What can we do to kind of
I
get
think
out
it's
of car
exactly
brain?
that. It steps just like that. That's what I do. And I think for different people, it's going to be different measures. I can feel my neck hairs go up when someone wrongs me on the street, right? Like there's that animal instinct that it's like, what? You got in front of me? Like that was my space. I was going to accelerate into that space. For some of us, it's give extra space and expect that someone else is going to take it, and not just that they're taking it. Allow, like, this is for other people. This is not my street. This is not my space. I just happen to be here at the same time that several other people are on the street. For something like the speed limit, sometimes it's, you don't want to over rely on something like cruise control and not be ready to hit the brakes if you need to. But that's one thing to do. I think an important starting point is just your mental space and identifying that this is an issue. And one fun exercise, I mean, you can think of lots of different variations of this, but ask someone what their thoughts, like show them a headline of a person getting ticketed for running a red light, or where you and I are based in Richmond, Virginia, getting a ticket for driving 10 miles an hour over the speed limit in a school zone while kids are coming in and out of school. Like, frame that and say, this person got a ticket. What do you think? Should they have to pay $100, $200 for that ticket? And then talk about it. Because what you'll find so often, even among the kindest people in everyday life, is, well, but how did they decide where that camera is placed? How big was the sign warning people about the camera? What about this? What about that? Put all that aside and think, and just sit on the fact that this person was driving 10 over the limit in a school zone. Like, you shouldn't have to have all this stuff. So even something like a safety camera, talking about that, or should people get ticketed for driving in the bus only lane? Fill in the blank with whatever scenario. I think just talking about those kinds of things is a fascinating social exercise, and it helps you identify this stuff in yourself. So that's what I would do as a starting point, is just understand this is real for whatever reasons, for whatever the wiring that we've got in our brains, and the outside forces that are helping to encourage bad behavior. Understanding that it's real is a big first step.
Yeah. And I think too, just taking a mental checklist of where you're at, because so many times we drive angry. I've, used to drive angry. Sometimes I'm still angry, but it used to really like get in. You're just like really furious about whatever, and you go faster because you have to get somewhere. You have to do something, or you're just like, oh, I'm so mad. And it's so much easier just to press on the gas a little bit, not realizing where you're at. You're in your neighborhood. You're on a regular street. You're on the highway. It doesn't matter. So taking a mental note and taking a few breaths and being like, okay, not the place to get my frustrations out in this huge 10,000 pound plus vehicle.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because aren't we often angry because we left later than we thought, or we thought we were leaving right on time, but then we couldn't find something, and then a significant other asked us where the water bottle was, or whatever, you name it. There's always something where we rush out the door, and now it's like every second matters. Of course, once we get where we're going, we act like, we've got all the time in the world. But there's something about that period when you get into the vehicle and you're on your way when, whether it's anger or anxiety, it just, that stuff ramps up.
And half the time, then that's when things happen where you start seeing, oh, I missed the light. That person cut me off. Oh, there's another stop sign. Why are they going so slow? Things like that. So yeah, taking a mental breathing exercise. I know my watch has a breathing thing where I could take a moment and breathe. And I don't care if it's hippy dippy or yoga, but just you got to remind yourself that you're in a huge death machine. Even though with all the bells and whistles, it's still capable of killing people. Um, Andy Boenau, I'm going to let you go because I know you have other things to do, and I really appreciate you talking to me about car brain on the mechanics of transportation. But this is your invitation to come back because there's so many other things I want to ask you about.
Thanks for having me. We will definitely do it again for people that want to read more about car brain
Yeah,
rants and the related. I write a lot at urbanismspeakeasy.com.
great. I'm glad you plugged that because I should have asked. All right, here we go.